All right, chaps, the bag of netting and fittings has arrived this morning, so we're good to go. Bought the poles up yesterday. Okay, thinking about which bed I'm going to do first. I'm going to do the bed that was the last one that was really badly dug up, which was the purple sprouting broccoli and the fennel. That's the first one I'm going to do, mainly because all the plants in there are really low. It's quite sparse and there's a lot of room at one end, which I'm going to put the minutina in later. So let's go and unpack. And what do I need? A tape measure, a pencil and a saw. Right, this is the bed that I'm going to do the prototype of. I don't have a master plan to show you before I've started making it really. I've got an idea of what I'm doing, but I'm going to put it together and then we'll see how it goes. This being a prototype, I might have to change some things. So we will just start making something and see how it goes. Yeah, as you can see, I'm a great planner. So this first incarnation of the bed cover that I'm going to make is actually made out of the same black poles that this square number is made out of. There's a couple of reasons why this square piece isn't working. It's worked pretty well in the past and it does keep the birds off and all that kind of thing. But where the foxes are getting in is underneath. So this is supported by the 4 legs going straight into the soil, which is very good in terms of keeping it stable, but the foxes are able to get up under the netting, even though we're rolling the netting in bamboo canes and pegging them down and that kind of thing. They're still getting in. Another problem with the square style is that the pipes, although they're really strong, and when you first put them together they hold up quite nicely, they actually start drooping and they start bending over time if they're on a horizontal up in the air with no support. Not such a major problem when it's just a small square like was over this, but when you're trying to cover the whole bed, you either have a big old droopy long piece going across the top, or you end up with loads of different legs, and when you try and move them, they will fall off. So I'm going to try and alleviate that issue by using an arched design. You also have to remove the netting completely or pull the whole lot off to be able to get access underneath for weeding or picking and any of that kind of thing. And the other crucial factor is that whatever you do, we need it to be able to be liftable, movable, removable, whatever it is, by a single person, because we're not always both up here together. Why doesn't it fit? And okay, first hiccup. So I bought this black pipe, which is exactly the same product code as the other pipe that we've got. Same product code, same manufacturer. Unfortunately, it's the 20mm black heavy duty conduit pipe, right? These fit inside. Oh no, they don't. I don't know if you can see this. So this is the old pipe, this is the new pipe. They are supposedly identical. However, we bought these about maybe 5 years ago. And look, they've changed the thickness. Can you see that this one is a thinner pipe than this one? It's exactly the same product, but unfortunately the corners that I'm using fit inside the pipe. So the 20mm measurement is the outside measurement. And these are now thicker pipes, so my dewberry doesn't fit in my pipe, chaps. I thought I might have had a file in the shed, but sadly I don't. So I'm going to go home, rummage around in our home shed and see if I've got a nice long file that I can just file down the inside of these pipes. It's marginal, like it's so tiny, but the plastic is completely inflexible. Like it's really strong plastic. Thinking about that though, is it even going to bend as well as the other one? Oh dear. I think it's a lot tougher, chaps. Oh no. Okay, well, I'm going to go home and see if I can get a file, see if I can get these to fit. This may be a complete write-off already. Right, let's try this again. That's going to make it a slightly longer process having to file out all of the ends, but I guess in the long run it is going to give it like a tighter fit. So, right, where were we? Cutting the end lengths. absolutely knackered, but the main structure is done. Unfortunately, it is now 5:10, so it's all getting a bit late. So what we're going to do is just chuck the netting over the top. I've only just put a few little clips in there just to kind of, you know, there's going to be more clips than that basically eventually, but all we're going to do is chuck the netting over the top of it, not do any of the cutting or anything, and then just peg it down and be optimistic that it's going to hold them off overnight. But yeah, so structure done. Woo! So the clips I'm using are sprung tool clips, the type that you would, you know, attach your hammer to your shed wall with. And they are actually attached to the top of the raised bed itself. And now the idea is, although this evening what we're doing is just draping the netting over and pegging it like we have been doing up until this point, the idea is that the netting will actually be permanently attached to this frame, up and under and sewn on. So there won't be any more of this tent peg nonsense. The whole thing will just slop down on top and clip down onto the top edge of the raised bed. Now I'm quite pleased with the structure overall. It's got those mid struts in there because this is so much stronger pipe than the previous stuff. The actual strength of it, having to curve it over, was going to kick out the two sides, so it's going to have these two struts in the middle. I don't think that's a problem. I'm quite happy to plant around them. It just so happens that obviously where the strut needs to go, I've already planted something, but you know, that's just sod's law, isn't it? I'll have to move them out the way. But yeah, structure, great. Lots of little things that need to be worked out. For example, the fact that the pipes don't fit in the connectors, because I can assure you I will not be filing out the inside of pipes to cover the whole allotment. But I'm pretty confident leaving this and leaving these poor plants here overnight, knowing that there's foxes around. Good afternoon. Apologies for the voice. It's not a great sound. I will try to keep my speaking to a minimum, just so it's not too irritating, but I've got a cold, in case you hadn't have guessed. So I sound a bit like Barry White going through puberty, which is a great, great sound to be listening to. Sorry about that. Right, so we just obviously come down here. We have been got again by the foxes, but they have not been in that bed. So I'm pretty pleased about that. They have made such a mess of the path up there. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The garlic kale has officially died a death. There's nothing left of that now. But a lot of the beds they haven't been through, but they obviously just had an absolute whale of a time at that end. And like the beds on either side of the new cover, but not under the new cover. So very happy about that. Does also mean that that bit of ground that we've got at the edge there, I'm quite confident about planting some stuff in there. So I'm going to get, you know, we've got this like little table down here at the moment with sort of things in the queue to get into the ground. I'm going to put some stuff in the other end of that bed today, because I'm pretty confident it's not going to get dug up. There's a couple of other patches that we've got on the allotment that are ready to be planted up, but every day we come up and they've been dug up. There's nothing in them, they're empty bits of ground. But the foxes have really taken to those areas. So obviously I'm a bit reluctant to put in some plants into those. So they're currently just staying as empty patches. Actually, I'll go and show you the bed and talk to you about what we have to still do on it. Yeah, so completely untouched bed, I'm very pleased about. So things that this will need to be modified. I'm really happy with the basic layout, the basic frame of it, not taking into account the having to chisel out the ends. That is something that's going to have to be resolved, because this should have been a very quick thing to put together, and it took like 2.5 hours of chiseling, and I've got a blistered hand. Yay! But because of the netting over the top and the fact that we're going to pull it down the sides, you'll see that these are going to pull in slightly, and I don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is where we're going to stitch around the bottom to attach it to the base frame, so around this bit here, we're also going to stitch in these like this, so that this bit isn't pulling, so that it all stays really nice, and over time it doesn't sort of start coming in this way. Yeah, but this is the end of the bed where I'm going to put some of those bits and pieces. The minutina is going to go in here, but generally, like, I'm really chuffed with that. I think it's going to work really well, and it will tip, you see. I wonder if I can demonstrate the tipping. Where are my hooks? Let me see if I can do this. I haven't actually got my pipe hinges on that side yet, but one of the crucial things is to make sure that any bed covers that we've got is that mum can get them off on her own, or basically that one person can lift them off, because we're not always up here together and you do need to be able to get inside. And if you've got something really cumbersome that you then can't lift up on your own, it makes it a bit tricky. So instead of having to pull this whole thing off, which it's just too difficult to do as one person, it's going to hinge. If I just take these little bits out, I'll show you what I mean by that. So you know that I'd clipped it all down with those like urn clips. Sorry about the sniffing, that's really gross of me, sorry. Urn clips. So the idea is that you just pop them off there. I haven't put any on this edge yet because this is the edge it's going to flip up. Pop it off there. And this should, oh, I've still got pins in. There we go. This should just lift and spin like that. Open. And then we've got full access to the bed underneath. And then obviously at the moment we've got all of this overhang, but that won't be there. And then we just flip it back down and clip it in. Fantastic. So that is how it works. Hello, Lils. Are you all right there, Bunners? You lovely girl. Isn't it nice in the sunshines? Yeah. Right, what are we taking up? Not that one. 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. And then we've got what? Nothing in there. A couple of extra fennel for infilling. The frame is still in a slightly precarious state because it's not really all attached. You see it's slightly wobbly, but once we've got it all kind of joined in together properly, I think it's going to be really strong. And the idea with the clips on the bottom is that that is the main access point problem that we've got, is things getting under the netting, like I've said. So with those clips on there, I think we're just going to have solved the problem. The only thing I've got to remember, as you can see I'm trying to work out, is where not to plant something, which is right under where the strut goes. So what's going in here is some infill of the fennel. So I planted out a load of fennel, it got dug up. Most of it has survived, but there was a couple of noticeable gaps, so I'm infilling that. The other end of the bed is the purple sprouting broccoli, all of which has been out of the ground twice and actually survived. So hopefully that's now not going to be disturbed again. We should actually get some purple sprouting broccoli in the spring, fingers crossed. These chaps that I'm just laying out now are a plant called Minutina, which is also sometimes called stag's horn plantain, which is like a salady crop. First time growing it actually, but it's something that Johanna grows and is utterly delicious. So I'm hoping these plants are going to be good. I'm also chucking in some spring onions. Yeah, yeah. Hang on, we need to get that in the middle. There we go. I'll come out of here. There we go. So hopefully they're all going to be safe. Unlike what was in this bed. So this bare patch here is where the garlic kale was. I don't know if you remember, I planted that out maybe about 3 or so weeks ago. Anyway, it's been dug out so many times that there's just nothing left. Luckily, it turns out that I actually re-sowed some slightly accidentally, not realising that we already had sown it, which means we've got extra to infill, which is excellent. This is something that I've never grown before, but it's supposed to be like a young, tender leaf kale. You eat the leaves very young and they have a garlicky taste. I've said before that sometimes when seed packets or whatnot say that it tastes like such and such, you try it and it doesn't. As Mum always says, it tastes very green. It tastes a bit grassy. But actually, the couple that we had in here that were repeatedly dug out, because they were dug out so many times, they ended up just bolting, and we just ate the top of them off. And they were delicious. Really small, obviously, but they tasted just like garlic and kale mixed. So yeah, I'm very pleased that we ended up having more of these to go in. Now we've just got to protect them. Right, pears. So, I mentioned last week or the week before that I had an inkling that you weren't supposed to let the pears actually ripen on the plants. And thank you to everybody who commented to say that that's absolutely right, and that they actually ripen from the inside out. Which means that by the time they feel ripe, my voice is going again, sorry, by the time they feel ripe, if you leave them on the tree, they will be rotten on the inside, which is not what we're going for. But that the pears should just break off like that. That just broke. That's perfect. Okay, I don't think all of these are ready because some of these are really quite small. But no, look, they do. They're just snapping off at the right point. So, yeah, perfect. Okay, I'm really chuffed with that. Don't think any of those because they're all really quite tiny. So I'm going to put the little sleeve back on them and leave them a little bit longer. Sorry about my voice, guys. This room must be very irritating to listen to. It's very irritating to be making this sound, I can tell you. Right, this other branch here has actually got some really quite big chaps on it. So I think a couple of them will definitely be ready to come off. Okay, these things have actually worked really fantastically. I'm really chuffed with them. Okay, so look at the size of these baity. Here we go that way. Yeah, gorgeous, look at that. I mean, that is not a bad size pear. It's got a little hole in it. But look at that. That one's not quite ready. You can go back in your little sock. Okay, now there's a big one on the other side. And is there anything? Oh yeah, there's a good one in there too. Oh, this is so exciting. Pears. Yep. Gorge. They're all quite small, I think they'll be. Leave them a little bit longer. And then there's a real big one on the back here. This is cool. I don't really know what this is doing. Sorry, something Mum has constructed. Let's just loop that off for a minute. Off we got. That is a good looking pear, if I do say so myself. Is it going to snap? Yes. Woo! What's the other one like in there? Is that going to go? No, that's not going to go. Let's leave this one for a little bit longer. Look at that! Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. And look, it's not just like it's on its own. We've got 10 of them. 10. And there's still 2, 3, 4, 5. Another 9 on there, but they're just a little bit smaller. But that is outrageously beautiful. Oh my God, I'm so excited. So now I've got to take them home. And apparently you just ripen them like on the, in a fruit bowl. Somebody, and I'm sorry to say, I can't remember who it was suggested this to me, but I thought it was a great idea, is that if you've got quite a big harvest, which, okay, so 10 pears might not be most people's huge harvest, but for me that's quite a lot of pears, is to put half of them in the fridge, ripen half of them up, and then the ones in the fridge, they just like stop, and then they'll ripen when you take them out, so that you're inundated with pears. But yeah, I am proper happy with my pear haul. Oh, it's wonderful. Something else I've got to pick actually while I'm up here is the, what are they called? Completely brain dead. Come on, Jessie, focus. The black lace elder that we've got at the top of the plot has got its berries, and they're just about ready, and they are going to be needed to make sambuca. Yes. Okay. I think that's probably enough for me, and I'm leaving. I'll load on there for the birds, obviously. I'll leave all the tall ones up there for the birds, but there's quite a few down here. Yeah, that's enough for me. I believe so. Hey, Nels. This one? Right. There's your non-existent packet of smalls. I'll save it. Right. Yeah. Do you want to see? See you later, guys. Bye. And just like that, chaps, it is September. Can you believe it? Today is the first day of September. And actually I've been playing with the idea of taking my foot off the pedal, mainly because I watched JB's video that he put out a couple of days ago, which was just saying that he's decided that he's going to maintain what's at his allotment, but he's not going to kind of go carry on full sowing and trying to get all these projects done and everything. He's just taking his foot off the pedal and taking a step back. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. Then I remembered I am not in the same boat as JB. The poor man has been doing 2 full-time jobs and house renovations and everything else that's been going on in his life, as well as trying to keep the allotment going and do the videos and all the rest of it. I am not in that situation, Jessie, so get a grip. You are not going to take your foot off the pedal. We just carry on. And actually, a lot of the stuff that you've got to sow in September is some of my favourite stuff. It's like the leafy green stuff that you get during the winter when that's what you really crave. So I'm carrying on with my sowing into September, and it's kind of split into 2 parts really. There is stuff which is going to be sown outdoors for a crop before we hit winter, but there's also things which I'm going to start now which are going to be for during winter and early spring. So first thing that I need to get some more in of is chard. Normally by this time of year we are quite well stocked with chard. We've normally got 4 varieties. The 4 varieties I grow is the peppermint chard, which is the pink one, a white stem, so whether it be white silver or Ford Hook Giant, one of those 2, a really pale acid green one with really soft leaves called Lucullus, and just a plain green one which is sometimes called perpetual spinach. But that's what I've normally got going by now, and I tend to try and keep those 4 varieties going all year. But although we had loads of chard in spring, which was the stuff which was left over from the winter, from that point till now we've had pretty much nothing, because the early stuff that I got in all got slugged, and then from about mid part where we should have been picking now, it keeps being dug up. Unfortunately, the latest stuff has also been dug up. So what I'm going to do is get some more sown now, and I am hoping that it's going to come to a decent enough size so I'll be able to plant some outside and some in the poly. I'll have some going in the poly anyway over winter, so now that's the ones that I'm sowing for that. But considering that I think that if I can make enough of those beds that I made earlier to cover the 9 non-arched beds that we've got, we're going to be growing in them over the winter, and they should be protected. So I'm going to try and get a mixture of chard growing in the polytunnel and chard growing outdoors in the bed, and the polytunnel one will be for picking over winter, and the ones that are in the bed will kind of sit there not doing a great deal until very, very early spring, when then we'll get another flush. So I'm going to try and space my chard out so that we've got full coverage, because due to slug and fox scenarios this year, we've certainly not got full coverage. It's desperate times on the chard front, chaps. Something else that I'm growing indoors and outdoors will be the mustard greens. So at the end yesterday you saw me picking some of those. Those are doing really well, and they will carry on until we sort of stop much light. So I'll still be able to pick them over the winter, but they won't grow much more. So they'll be carrying us up until end of November-ish sort of time, and then I'll leave them in the bed, and then come spring again they'll have an early flush. But I'll be sowing some now which are the ones that are going to be growing in the polytunnel over winter, and they should be pickable for pretty much the whole time. The 2 varieties I do, same as the ones that are in the bed, are Green Wave and Dragon's Tongue. The mustard greens, I've said before, mustard greens, the term can kind of put people off sometimes, because like mustard doesn't sound like it'd be particularly nice as a green, but they don't taste mustardy. They're a little bit turnipy, but they're more like an Asian green. And this is the time for the Asian greens, like all the pak choi, the komatsuna, the mizuna, all of those kind of ones. And I'm going to be growing them in 3 places this year. Polytunnel. I'm going to put some in the greenhouse because I think I'm going to have a decent amount of space in the greenhouse over winter this year. And then I'm also going to put some in a bed. I'm thinking of, with my new roundy beds, I'm going to make the majority of them netting, but I'm going to probably cover one in the leftover polytunnel cover, so we've got a small bed cover polytunnel for the winter, which I'll be putting some of the oriental greens in. Sorry, my voice is going again. Lots of those varieties. You've seen I've grown the Komatsuna a lot this year. I'm really, really keen on that. I'll be doing the dark red pak choi, which is a really lovely one. I've got 2 types of Mizuna. One of them's much lacier than the other one. The other one's a little bit curly, but I'll just put them all in. A couple of autumn crops that I'll just be growing straight outside. These aren't going to be overwintered in undercover or anything. I'm going to put some spinach in just for baby leaf picking. There's still time to do that. It's not going to bolt at this time of year. And it will just keep going until we get the really cold weather. So I'll be putting a couple of rows of that in, just direct sown. I'll also be doing the same with winter radishes. Oh gosh, sorry. I'll also be doing the same with winter radishes. Now, I'll talk about the differences between summer and winter radishes when I'm sowing them, which will be next week. Where they're just a slower growing radish. And the most famous one, which is the one I'm going to be putting in, is called watermelon. Green outside, pink in the middle, absolutely gorgeous. So that one will be going just straight, direct sown, outdoors. Something else I'm going to do, which I tried last year and actually was a great success, is I'm going to sow a box of carrots early in this month. And they will be for picking in the early spring, and they'll stay in the greenhouse for the whole year. Last year we did them in a polystyrene container, and they were brilliant. It was so nice to be picking carrots at like very early April. So I'm going to do that again. That'll be doing next week. And that's something that which will just stay in the greenhouse for the whole of the winter. Not picking, they'll just grow away very quietly. We'll sit there dormant really. They don't sort of do much over winter, but they get going really, really fast in spring. So I'm definitely going to try that again this year. Talking of things for really early spring, September is a really good time to start getting peas and broad beans in for the early crop next year, like the overwintering ones. I'm not going to do them at the beginning of the month. I will wait until the end of the month for them because they will just take off too quick for me and they'll be too big to kind of cope over winter. So they're going to be an end of the month crop. But if you're further north or in a slightly cooler place, it's probably time to start getting them in. Same with onions and garlic. You can start putting them in now. I tend to leave that until October, and I haven't actually decided whether I'm going to be doing them this year or not after all the white rot, etc. disasters of this year. There's other bits and pieces that I won't be putting in, but you can put in things like collard greens, which is like an open cabbage, so you don't have a hearted ball cabbage. It's more like a pick and come again type cabbage. Plays the same sort of role as the Asturian cabbage trees, which is the one that I like to grow. Unfortunately, all of mine died, so I've got a whole new wave of them to start off again in the spring. But I'm not going to bother with the collard greens. I'll just have to have a winter without pick and come again cabbage. But we've got so many cabbages on the go, like Savoy and red. If the foxes don't dig them out again, we should have a decent amount of cabbage over winter. So I'm not going to bother with collard greens, but it is that time. You can also sow spring cabbages now. I got mine in last week, so they're already done for me. And if you're in a warmer spot like here, you can probably get away with a last sowing of beetroot for baby beetroot. I've got so much beetroot on the go, I'm not going to put any more in. I will be doing lettuces though. So you can grow over winter lettuces. So one example of that is like Arctic King. There's a couple of winter lettuces, and actually most of the time I've grown them, they've grown fantastically well, but the flavour just hasn't been that great. But I've been convinced this year to have another go with Arctic King. There's a couple of them. They mostly have winter themed sort of names about them. I think there's like Queen of Frost, and there's a couple of them. I haven't been wildly impressed with their flavour, but I'm going to give these ones another go. So we'll have these over winter. But I am going to sow some lettuces that you would normally grow in the summer. I'm going to do lobjoits, but this is going to be growing in the polytunnel. Rosa de Taglio is one that you can grow really quite late in the year. I'll put some of that in the poly as well. Going to stick some Texel greens in. I'm going to put some of these outside and in the polytunnel, but they want to be direct sown outdoors, so I'll be putting some of those in, and then I'll probably transplant to give them a bit more space, and I'll transplant them into the poly when we get to that time. And I'm going to chuck some more rocket in. Normally I direct sow rocket, but I will be sowing this into plugs so that I can get it into the poly or the undercover bed or into the greenhouse or somewhere. But I really love rocket. It's one of my favourites. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to keep it going over winter. A couple of years we've been really successful with it and just had the full year of really fantastic rocket. In a couple of years I've just missed it and it hasn't really worked out. So we'll see which year this is. It's always a bit hit and miss really, isn't it? But something I am going to start up already, which is earlier than last year, is as we start clearing beds. Sorry. As we start clearing beds now, the areas that I'm not going to be re-sowing into or replanting into for the winter, I'm going to start putting my field beans in, which is the green manure. If you're interested in what use field beans are, I did a whole video on field beans. I'm that much of a fan of them. So I'll put a link of that into the description. I really rate them as a winter crop. So I'll be starting to get some of those in. And that's basically all I'm going to be doing for September in terms of the sowing. There's going to be a lot of harvesting. Unfortunately, something that there isn't going to be any harvesting of is the sweet corn. Unfortunately, that was the latest thing to be got, and that has been got by badgers. They left their rather distinctive calling card right in the middle of the bed, and they've eaten all the sweet corn. So the difference between the foxes is the foxes are not after the vegetables per se, they're after just what's in the soil. So they kick the plants up everywhere and cause a right mess, but they're not actually targeting the veg itself, whereas the badgers, beetroot and sweet corn are their absolute favourites. They go for carrots as well, hence we grow our carrots in a box that's well protected. But yeah, unfortunately, I think there's probably one corn that's still viable on there, but we've had like 3 years of real bad luck with the sweet corn. Last year we tried to grow it in the fruit cage and it just hated it. I don't know why. So although the plants were completely protected from the badgers, they just weren't happy. Maybe they like living a life of danger. But yeah, sadly, there is no sweet corn for us. And we have had a load more damage in the last couple of days. Mum has taken some pictures for you. Well, talking of damage, right, there's been some advancement on the bed. Let me grab the pole. So the connectors that I used to build that prototype obviously were the ones that slot inside the pole, and having thicker poles, it wasn't working. I won't be doing the filing again. That was a real pain in the behind, but I really wanted to get it done that day and that was my only option. However, I have since ordered a whole selection of different end caps that go over, inside, all sorts, to test different ones, and these are the ones that I think I'm going to go with. They're not black, they're grey, but for some reason from the same company, getting black ones is like twice as expensive. So I'm quite happy to go with grey. I've ordered a load of them. I'm going to go and swap out the corners of that bed that we've already made just to check that it's all go. And then up from this point on, I'll be using those. And the beds that I want to cover are the 9 beds that don't have the arches in, so they will be full bed covers. I want to get that done before spring. I know that's giving myself a lot of time, but I want to start spring off with fully covered beds, basically. And it would be useful to have at least 3 of them going really quite quickly, because obviously there's things that I want to plant out and things that I don't want to be dug up. So that is my mission for next week. Swap over, check it all works, do a test run with sewing that mesh on the top, and then I'm good to go. I'll just bulk order everything. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. But yes, next week, chaps, we should have a complete bed finished. I will make a dedicated single video of making the bed once I know that the system works, with links to where you can buy all the things. That should be the end of next week if all goes well with putting this one together. There's no point me putting all the links to everything and telling you how to make it if it actually turns out that it doesn't work. So I want to make sure that it actually works before I do anything. But I'll have links to all the clips to get it onto the bed, the netting, the corners and the pipe. Excellent. Oh, I'm going to stop talking because this is getting ridiculous. My cold has now moved into like tickly, tickly, tickly. So every time I breathe in, sorry. Yeah, so I'm going to do cheers with a piece of pipe. Actually, it looks a bit threatening, doesn't it? Well, I'm not drinking for 2 reasons. Firstly, because I feel rubbish, and secondly, it's the middle of the day. So I'm not going to be cheersing you, but I will say just a general cheers to everybody. Thank you for putting up with my terrible voice. Hopefully next week I won't be sounding like this. And I will see you for more sewing for September, for progress on this project, and yeah, talking about other things that are going on in September, because I've got some big plans. I'm going to have to get my behind in gear because we've got a lot to do. Right. Cheers, chaps. So it is thank you again to my patrons, who are the people whose names you see at the end of the vlog every week. They are the people who keep this going. And thank you to everybody else who's watching. Top marks to anybody who spotted that the font and the detailing and the little symbol at the top is just slightly different this week. That is because right when I started editing this video, the program that I use to edit is called LumaFusion, and for some reason it just decided it wasn't going to play ball anymore. And so after lots of deleting and changing and all the rest of it, I had to get rid and reinstall from scratch, which meant that all of my presets that make editing the video just that little bit quicker are gone. So I had to start again with all of those things. So there's a few little tweaks. The font is different at the beginning, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you spotted it, well done. This is the new look. I'll see you next week, chaps. I'm going to go and probably bury my head in the duvet. See you next week, chaps. Come on. You can get through this bit.